Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Alert Communications and Case Status webinar, How Case Status Accelerates Growth and Improves Client Relationships. Our goal is to look at law firm engagement in terms of tech. In this session, we will take a step back from our daily lives to reconsider all that we do in terms of client engagement. Next. In terms of housekeeping, feel free to use the chat and Q&A tools to interact with us. Chat, we will have a series of questions throughout the presentation where we would welcome any responses in the chat. And for Q&A, if there are any questions that you have throughout the presentation, feel free to fill them out there and we will respond at the end of the presentation. Next. Now with that, I would like to introduce Max Ifatian. He is the Director of Sales at Alert Communications. He is a driven growth leader focused on law firms nationwide and finding ways to get a fully integrated legal marketing and retainer services for them. He is a multi-sector corporate leader, strategic development coach, and business partner. Max?
Thank you, Quinn, so much for that introduction. Really a pleasure, everyone, to join you. Thank you for your time. Thank you, team, for being here. We're very excited about this opportunity to team up with Case Status. Next. This is a very exciting opportunity for us because we've always wanted to provide a tool for the firm that they can see every case they have mobilely. And I think we've got the partner for you. So we'd like you to give this opportunity to enhance those communication efficiencies and help you better convert the leads that we bring you. So we're helping you now integrate with Case Status. They're an expanded communication time savings for your legal team, and it will help you elevate your client's experience. Next. And now, may I introduce you, Paul Bamette, Vice President of Product Marketing. He's a mechanical engineer, master's in business administration, 25 years in tech, passionate about innovation. He's got a love when disruption benefits all, loves to travel, and I hear he's a private pilot. So, Paul, you have the floor.
Great. Thanks, Max. Appreciate it. And to the Alert Communications family, glad to be here and hope to, in the short amount of time, instill in you some ideas about some cool things that are happening in our legal services space. So with that introduction, I share things like my mechanical engineering because it's how my brain is wired. And you're going to see that in some of the visuals today. Likewise, there's some parallels to traveling and being a pilot. So I'm going to pull those together. There is a purpose to sharing that. But truth to all, I am passionate about incubation and innovation. And some of the cool things you're going to see today are about following trends in the marketplace and bringing to our clients, ultimately what they look for from their favorite brands, including their legal services providers. With my introduction out of the way, just want to give a brief overview of Case Status. Again, we're going to kind of pull it all together. But if I, just had to give you the brief of who we are the leading mobile portal and messaging platform for law firms. Basically that engagement with your client, we are leading the space in client service capabilities. So we help drive not only those interactions, but like I use the word engagement because that's about better client experiences so they can understand their journey in their legal services case or matter and ultimately come out of the end really satisfied. We complement case management or practice management. We are not case management. So you'll see that throughout about how we plug into the single source of truth. But ultimately, we plug into case management with communications, automations, mass and bulk messaging, and basically a flat platform that's always within reach to your client, which is a novel concept, right? That you can reach them in a moment's notice via their smartphone. And we bring that to bear. So we're radically focused on technology, but manifested in business outcomes. So a lot of you as legal professionals, you went to school for a long period of time to learn your craft. And a lot of that did not include business school, right? Business, sort of classes and operations. So we understand that constantly you're trying to refine those practices, those firms to be better. And we're anchored in business outcomes. So you'll see a lot of that, what I talk about today, the ideas of what we're doing, but keep asking the question, why do we do it? Why do we do it? And the answer is always going to be better business outcomes. So We're going to talk about some of our social proofs and the high ratings that our solutions get on the app stores. But before we do that, I just wanted to touch on the complementary factor with Alert Communications and the partnership there, right? You work a lot with consumers and potential clients using Alert Communications to engage and interact with these potentials, even, maybe during and after them being a client. What Case Status is all about is when they are a client, maximizing that engagement. So think about this as a cycle, a law firm cycle, right? You're constantly bringing in new clients, you're servicing them, and you're hopefully making them super delighted so that they want to shout at the rooftops about your firm so that other people will want to come there. We are all about that experience while they are proceeding in their case. So that's who we are. So if you want to take a moment real fast and just give a little bit of color in the chat button about who you are, maybe you can just start with sort of what your primary practice area is, and we can get a little bit better idea of who is joining us here today. And I apologize with my presentation mode. If you are on Quinn still or Max and can see some of the responses that are coming in chat, would love to see what's going in.
Yes, I can see and I will respond. Still waiting on a couple of responses.
Great. Just want to make sure it's pertinent to the practice areas because I know not all practice areas are created equal in how they handle their cases or matters.
No responses yet.
All right, well, we'll proceed on, Quinn, and keep moving through. So if you want to share, again, throw it in the chat, throw it in the Q&A widget, and we'll keep an eye on that as we go. With that said, and some introductions out of the way, the goals for this session is to just kind of take a step back, as Max said, from our daily grind and look at this idea of running the law firm business and look at this balancing act that we're in and acknowledge it and the pains that come along with it, or the challenges and therefore the opportunities. We're going to talk a little bit about client portals, what they are and why they're client preferred. And we're going to talk about the importance of this idea of front office and its tiebacks to the back office, right? So everybody can kind of appreciate the idea of getting work done and being, behind the scenes versus what we expose to our clients. And we will talk a little bit about how the case management and case status work well together. So let's start with the balancing act, get going first. Again, if you can take a moment on the chat and just kind of throw in, what is the number one bar complaint that is out there? This is my probing question to make it a little bit more interactive. Usually I get all A's on this response. Everybody seems to be well in tune with what's going on out there. And I think I have access to the Q&A now as well as the chat. So I see a few things coming in and they are all anchored on the right answer, which is communications. As I summarize it, it is a lot to do with the fact that the client doesn't know what's going on with their case, right? They hired you as a legal team, and now they just want to know that they're proceeding down what I call the green path towards a good outcome. So what we need to just take a moment and acknowledge is to acknowledge the fact that this is the perspective that our clients see. This perspective is one-on-one. It's intimate, right? It's a very healthy relationship to think of it this way, but this is how it goes when they've hired you as staff and are ultimately engaging with you and what they expect to see from you. So that's their vantage point. The next question we have out there is, what is the number one staff complaint? And this is a little bit of research that we've done on the case status side, but just curious what folks see from the standpoint of the answers there. So take a moment, just a real quick. So yeah, so some of the answers that we hear is about reacting to what clients are asking about their case, right? So it's a reciprocal to the previous pain that I talked about before, which is, when a client is calling in and constantly having to call and ask about their case, and that's their number one complaint, reciprocally, the staff are challenged with this idea of reacting to all these inbound calls, right? You come in, you pour your coffee for the day, you've got your work set out to get some stuff done. And when ultimately you get disrupted and all of the plans for the day go away, that's a pretty hard task, right? So what we do is we acknowledge this vantage point, right? This is a healthy firm, a healthy practice. From your point of view as a legal professional, you have a lot of bodies to feed. So this is very juxtaposed to the idea of the intimate one-on-one relationship. So we just kind of set that stage of pains. These are what I would call jaundice. They're not root causes, but they are signals of what is happening behind the scenes. So as we look at, this idea of a balancing act, we look at the juggling nature between the casework that has to get done and the client engagement. That is ultimately what we're talking about here. That's where those two complaints and those two different perspectives come to bear. So with the casework, that's what we're really good at, right? We're really good at the practice of law, at what we studied to do in our space. And a lot of the work we do is client independent. Some of it is client dependent. Ultimately, that is done, by the team, and staff morale, tenure, all of that is related to it. But this is brand reality, right? Can you drive a legal outcome with the work that you're doing? On the flip side, with the client dependent, nature of the practice, there's the client engagement, and that's twofold, right? A little bit of is get stuff done, as I like to call it, and the other part of it is relationship and rapport, right? Just the human emotional side of feeling connected with your legal team. Ultimately, client satisfaction is tied to the second hand, and these are the two that are constantly at tug of war with a firm, right? So I got a little animation here, a little, easy way to spell it out. But the way I like to say is, as the casework piles up, which is good, right? Healthy, you bringing in more clients to service, the casework to service then piles up. At the same time, client engagement is piling up, and this is where my mechanical engineer sort of metaphor comes into play, right? I think of the fulcrum or the seesaw as, being very out of balance as you weighed up, things on either side of this. And this is the tug of war. So how do we shore up this balancing act? How do we make it so that it's a little bit tighter? The answer I would use is technology. So on the one side, when the casework piles up, we're very familiar with practice management and case management software. In this case, there are a lot of leading names that are out there that can service a particular need of a law firm. And so there's a lot to choose from on the left-hand side of this image. On the right-hand side, we rely on front office tech. We probably have never used that terminology before, but ultimately, this is the idea of how we're handling engagement. And when we break it down, and we're going to show that today, and we think about the front office tech we use, it's not simple. It's not simple for clients, and it's not simple for staff. So when I say front office tech, I'm thinking of phone, I'm thinking of email. You could even say video conferencing, maybe even social media in some regards, SMS text. Back in the day, it used to have fax as well, right? So you've got the client out there in the ether, you're at the brick and mortar, and you're trying to engage. And the challenge here is you could look at it a couple of different ways. You say, well, we'll let the client choose how they want to engage with us. Well, that creates staff challenges of monitoring multiple inbounds, right? It can be very, very challenging there. But what about when you need to reach the client, unless there is a known way to connect with them? And not all channels are created equal with urgency or accessibility or the human side of it. It gets really chaotic about how you use this current front office tech. And that's ultimately where the disruption, the idea of being innovation in the tech sector, we are seeking to disrupt. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, right? You see a lot of technology here. Seldom do we sunset or retire a technology when another one comes along. And I'll talk about that a little later. So that's front office tech. How do we engage with our clients? So we're going to talk about how case status is changing the landscape there in the context of doing what the data research tells us the clients want, consumers want. Before we do that, I want to talk about the consumer experience and the measurement, because again, this is going to tie back to good business outcomes. So we use an idea of Net Promoter Score, which you see here on the left. So when you engage with a client, you ask them a question, or you should ask them a question of how likely they are to refer your firm to a friend or colleague or family. And so if you get a 9 or a 10, those are considered promoters. If you get a 7 or 8, they're kind of in the middle. They're considered passives. And if you get anything 6 or below, down to 0, those are considered detractors. And ultimately, what Net Promoter Score does, it ignores the passives in the middle. It takes all of your percent of promoters that you've asked this question, your 9s and 10s, and it subtracts out the detractors. So it's a scale of -100 to +100. It's not a percent, but it's just a scale. And it was launched many years ago. It's used in B2B, business to business enterprises. It's used in a lot of B2C, business to consumer enterprises like Amazon. Amazon brags, as you would imagine, having a very high Net Promoter Score for very good reasons. Their clientele are very happy. 30 in the consumer space is considered fair. 40 is kind of okay. 50 is great, and 80 is world class. So to put it into perspective, we as legal services providers are at a 32. This is tracked, and we've got some source information about how it's been tracked over the years, and it's kind of ebbed and flowed. It's been as high, as low as 20, as high as 40, but it's kind of always been around this 32. To put that in context, right, that's fair, right? We say, okay, we're doing okay. The NPS score of the airline industry is 27, which is basically the same thing as 32. That's the travel, that's the pilot in me coming out and saying, imagine the last trip you had, whether it was going through TSA, whether it was waiting for a delayed flight, or getting cramped in as you go through the cattle drive to get your seat, and sitting on the tarmac in 90-degree weather, whatever the case might be. It is not a client-first idea. We fly because we love to travel. If you're like me, you stomach through it. But it is not something that we think of with high regard. So our 32 is kind of an indication of where those, I want to know what's going on in my case, and some of the staff reciprocal pains. This is where it manifests. This is our measuring stick. We want to change this. And we can think of it altruistically, like we want to get all legal services above, or we can think about it competitively. I want to stand above all the other options that are out there. And that's why this is really important, because ultimately what I'm going to talk about next is delight. Real quick though, curious, do you measure client satisfaction? Do you ask your clients today how they're doing, how they're feeling at any point along the way? I've got some data that talks about what I see. So if you want to throw it in the Q&A and or the chat, love to see what you see with that. Podium surveys via email. It's great. Yep. You can send emails out, send a SurveyMonkey. But sounds like we have some yeses out there. So in my research, macro-wise, I have seen about 50% say yes. And typically it's in the latter part of the experience. 50% say no. A lot of people are scared to measure client satisfaction. And we're going to talk about why that fear should not be felt deeply. We can really get beyond the fear and put it into a playbook. So this idea of low scores in our sector, some pains that we're feeling real hand as staff, our clients are feeling, bar complaints, all of that. So where does technology play to drive delight? Let's talk a little bit about client portals, about what we're doing in our space to really drive this. So the idea of the client portal is to simplify. It's to consolidate. Remember the front office tech image that I showed a little bit before? We had a lot of different things peppered on the left and the right. The truth is the client has already consolidated. I'm a client, I'm a consumer, and I do so much on this smartphone, smart device. I expect everything to be accessible there, on the move, at home, whatever the case might be. I've consolidated, right? On the flip side, on the right-hand side, the firm, right, with your case management or practice management software, the portal is the idea of bringing that consolidation to your side. You still need phone, and you still need things like video conference and in-office meeting, and alert communication is a great point to that, right? A lot of what alert communications brings to bear is the ability to take a call, have human-to-human interaction. And there are certain situations like intake that you should have that. You shouldn't replace it with technology. You've got to have a human ready to take that call. right? So, but once they're a client and they're working through it, you still want to make those available, but there's a lot of desire to self-serve. Your client wants to self-serve. I don't know about you, but last time I went to the grocery store, I checked myself out and I bagged the groceries. The last time I flew, I went to a kiosk and checked in, right? Pump gas, right? When's the last time you went to a full service pump gas? We do stuff ourselves because we want to, it empowers us, it's faster, right? And that's the consumer behavior that's happening out there. And so that's why this is really powerful. Now, as part of my education, we call this a thought leadership series. So part of this is, really to stir the pot about how you think this. I want you to come away knowing that there's basically two types of portals out there. You have browser-based portals and you have app-based portals. So we're going to break down the compare and contrast of these two different types of portals. I'm going to start with how they're similar, what they're both trying to do. So what they're both trying to do is consolidate those communications, as I mentioned in the image, right? Be accessible from multiple devices. So I could be on this or you kind of see it with my background. I could be on my iPhone, I could be on my iPad, I could be on my laptop, right? Like I can access the portal anywhere. I can integrate with the case management software, right? It's a window. Sometimes it's the case management software provider that's providing the portal. It gives a personalized experience. I see my information as a client in there. It's secure, right? It's keeping my information secure. It promotes the self-service that I talked about, right? Like bagging my own groceries. I can go get the information whenever I want to. And it's available on smartphones. And they all use text typically as their first invite. That's where they're pretty much similar. But from there, the different types of portals start to diverge. So we have the items down the middle, and I've got browser portals on the left, app portals on the right. So as the browser portal sort of infers, you need a browser like Safari. So if I'm running on my iPhone or my Android device, I've got to have Safari or Chrome or something open, ready to access. I got to know the URL and the domain as well, right? I got to know where to go or flag it in there. I got to log in, right? I got to use my credentials, username, and password to get in there. And I got to have internet connection, right? The app portal, no browser, no URL, no credentials needed. It uses two-factor authentication, so that's not to infer that it's not secure. It's very secure. It's using the security on your device, so you have to log into your device with face recognition, a passcode, whatever. But it also will do a phone check to give you a code to log in. So it is two-factor authentication. The other interesting thing about an app portal is they can actually work offline. So again, when you're traveling from A to B, you're in airplane mode, you're sitting on a plane, you can actually check your case. It stores some of the information locally. Further, the idea of a browser portal continues to use SMS text, which is an interesting current event, right? If you're following everything that's going on with SMS text, it's like email in the 90s. All the bad actors have made text very much exposed, and now the Verizons, the AT&Ts, the T-Mobiles are ratcheting down. So if you're a business communicating with a consumer via text, you have to follow all these new rules, or else you could potentially get on the naughty list and not get your text through. That's a major problem if you're trying to communicate with a client. The beauty of app portals is they use push notifications. So if you can get somebody on an app portal, you actually don't need SMS text for anything except for the dual factor authentication. So really cool there. Last thing of the divergence is the ability to access other things on the smart device, right? A lot of things are running on this, including my camera. The potential to tie into those types of features on an app portal are there. The browser portals really there's no investment being made to do that. It's too difficult. So those are the different types of portals. They're trying to do the same thing, which is bridge your client to a consolidated form to you, the firm. But ultimately, they do it in very different ways. Now, if anybody ever tells you that nobody will download an app, that's not true, right? Not every app they will download, but a 5-star highly rated app, they will definitely download. And we're going to unpack that idea. So I say we the app people here in the United States, research shows almost 5 hours a day, and I'm guilty here, on these smart devices doing stuff, reading the news maybe, perhaps transactions, perhaps communicating, all of the above. 93% of that time that we spend is not in Safari browser, it's not in Chrome, it's in the apps that engage us, our favorite brands, right? That's what the data says. A totally different source here on this slide is how that trend has changed over time. So they're a little bit different on the 5 hours, closer to 4 hours here in 2022. But you can see on the bottom is the black of the browser use. It's actually declining not only in minutes, but in percentage. And the red continues to grow. We continue to spend more times in apps that engage us, our favorite brands. And that's, if you, again, take a step back and think about it, that makes sense, right? Apps that get stuff done are forever on our phones. I look at my phone and do a little self-reflection. My Starbucks app gets coffee done, right? I pull up, it's ready to go. I'm off and running. That's only $5 to $10, but the utility is pretty good, right? My Uber app, when I need a ride, we're talking about 10 to $25, and I got a ride. It's instantaneous. It's empowering. That thing will stay on my phone forever. USAA, when I'm getting my insurance payment, my auto insurance done, right? Maybe $500, $600, $700 per policy every 6 months, but it stays there. It's a great way to interact, pull up my information. It stays there. It gets stuff done. On the right-hand side, if you can squint in there, you can see all of the different types of sectors that are using apps to engage. And it'll blow your mind, the stuff that's out there. One of my favorites is BMW, right? You can't drive the car with it. You can't even start the car with the app. But they have a 5-star app, thousands of ratings, and they're engaging their BMW drivers with that app. They've figured out exactly how to add value and get stuff done for those BMW drivers. That's a great thing there. So as a consumer, my question to you in this sort of chat poll is, do you agree, right? Do you agree that you have apps on your phone and that they get stuff done, have utility, have value? I think I know what the answer will be overwhelmingly, but we'll just scan as we look at this. So a few remarks coming in that, yes, we all do appreciate what these apps do for us on a daily basis. So you are part of the research, right? So that's the only reason I sort of asked the question out there is to make sure that that you sort of appreciate not only what the data says about what's happening in the marketplace, but that you appreciate how easy it is to be a consumer and to fall into this behavior. So what do we do from there? What I like to translate back to is, it's not coffee, it's not a ride, it's not doing my insurance payment, it's my legal case. Arguably, nobody wants to hire a legal services team. We do it because we have to. Something's happened in our life where we need a professional to represent us in some way, shape, or form. The stakes are high when it happens. And you can look at stakes in qualitative terms. You can look at those stakes in quantitative terms. So I've got a few, sort of qualitative on the left-hand side of whether you're in immigration, criminal, family, patent, estate. Again, there's a lot riding on it. I really want to have access to what's going on there. Quantitatively, back to my Starbucks example, like the dollars that are in play, workers' comp, mass tort, personal injury, or even disability, way, shadow anything that we see as consumers. So the stakes are high to have an app that is engaging and gets us through. So that is the technology, the idea. And two types of apps that two types of portals that are out there. The reason I set up the stage for the app is really going to tie back into what we're doing here at Case Status to really disrupt and transform engagement radically with your client, right? So if we think about how we're doing it today, back to the old technology, I throw in some dates just so you can see we seldom retire engagement technology. Phone, 1876, right? The web arguably was invented in 89, text 92, email 71. These are technologies that we continue to stack on top of each other, and we just throw them out there and let our clients sort of attack us in any way, shape, or form. I don't know about you, but I would love to never get an email in the rest of my life. And in some ways, Slack internally, we're close to that, right? So there are other technologies like what we're talking about today that seek, again, to consolidate that and get out of this type of engagement. So I'm going to skip this slide because we already presented it, but just to recap, right? The 32 and the airline industry, we seek to do better. So when we think about the portal, the app portal, that is what we're anchored on here at Case Status. So clients love the app. The idea that you provide a portal to your client isn't a solution. There's a lot of folks out there that have deployed portals and have seen 20, 25, 30, 35% adoption. When you do that, you've just continued the insanity of adding another technology without replacing anything. You have to get to a point where the majority and the clear majority use that technology so that you can start to make the other ones obsolete, right? So at Case Status, we provide both a web-based portal access and an app-based. So we have the horse race going in reality. 80% of those invited use the app. They use the app. They download the app. We have thousands of ratings on both the Apple Store on the left, Google Play on the right. They love it. They download it. They use it because why? It has value. It has utility, right? And those 5-star apps are forever. So that's the big part of what we're anchoring. But ultimately, what happens when you have that app? It's not, where does the value come from? Where does the utility come from? It comes from all the things that you're doing in the engagement. So again, if you're on the right-hand side, you're doing the casework with your case management, CMS, or your practice management on the right, Case Status gives a window, right? It presents a lot of that information about what's going on, where they are in their stages, right? What does the overall stage look like? Where are they in their checklist, right? Send them a checklist, automated checklist, appointments, treatment tracking. All of this stuff is exposed to them to consume either real time or at their leisure. On your side, it creates workflows, it creates automation, it creates a higher level of brand engagement because you're able to build a journey up front the way you want it to, and then have it exposed to the client. And remember, 80% of them are on this place you want them to be. So they're self-serving. We have one stat we boast on our website: 93% of those who hit the app don't contact the team because they found what they needed in the app. So it's about empowering that consumer. And again, the data shows that this is what the consumers want. So that's what we're all about and what we're doing. So we come back to the pains, whether it's the staff on the bottom reacting to all the client inquiries, or if it's about all these bar complaints about communication. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. Let me call, let me email, let me hit my team and ask them over and over again. Both of those are solved. We see those day in, day out. Those are the immediate outcomes, but they're not the final outcomes when you move to a solution like Case Status. So the happy business side of what we really are seeing are kind of broken down into these 6 ideas that I've been sort of playing with the last few weeks. The first one is the adoption, right? Again, we can get that consolidation, we can get those results because we're able to get the clients aggregated in one place. And that one place is a lot easier to work with. If you go to our website and look at our customer section, you will see tons of testimonials that are anchored on quantitative data. Hundreds of hours. That's one of the things we love to measure with firms before and after Case Status. So hundreds of hours a year. My most recent one, small firm, 366 hours for a 2-person shop in 9 months, right? 366 hours, if you do the math, is nothing to sneeze at. Major operational efficiencies. We also see a high reduction in phone and email, typically averages about 50%, 51%. But we can see as high as 80, 90%. We have a few customer testimonials that have hit that high. Really awesome. And again, you think about all those wasted interactions that weren't needed. You could have been doing casework. You could have been having the more intimate interactions as well. Below that, we give you the automated way to track client satisfaction. Again, we take the fear out of keeping a pulse on the smiley face, right? Are you a 0? Are you a 10? Are you a hero or a 0 is what we say, right? Don't worry about the 0s or the 6s. Those are great. We celebrate those. Why? Because you know what's going on. When you're an ostrich and you stick your head in the sand and they're a 6 and you don't ask them they're a 6, it doesn't make the 6 go away. And the 6 is more likely to get into a public domain and shout at the rooftops, right? So you got to track satisfaction and enable a playbook. And that's what our automations and our system does, is it gives you the ability to track, to know, to not run away like the ostrich, and then to give your team a playbook, right? You got the 6, here's what you do. And let me tell you, a 9 at the end of a case that was a 6 before is a stronger 9 than a 9 all the way through. Everybody loves a comeback, and that is a great way to really earn some awesome insights. Moreover, growth is huge, right? So when you know the 9s and 10s, now you can go to your, I know Alert Communications has a great service where they will have the grooming and the nurturing to find those reviews and those referrals out there. Well, imagine if you could fuel Alert Communications team with all the 9s and 10s. Here they are, right? These are the people to go ask, right? Pick up the phone, smile and dial, and look at all look at all the yield come in. That's what it's all about. And then finally, I like to talk about sort of the insights of interaction. So since we make a lot of this interaction, sort of asynchronous, self-serving, we still want you to have the analytics to see what's happening. Are they logging in? Are they communicating? Are they going through checklists? And we bring that Moneyball aspect so you can get the on-base percentage up, get the win rate up, and ultimately drive that engagement way up. So insight's a big part of knowing, what's going on in the head of the client so you can stay ahead of it all. Really business outcome closing. So with that, Max and Quinn, I'm going to wrap it up, see if we have any questions out there. But in closing, I'll just make a couple of comments on this topic. I hope it's helpful and intriguing about what we're doing. Again, we know that this type of transformation doesn't happen overnight. It is an education process. We know that we are leading, trailblazing client service in the legal services space. What we encourage you to do is get with your alert communications representatives, with case status representatives, and learn with us. Come look at the data. Because again, I think about legal professionals. We always talk about precedent, right? We always talk about what happened before, what's happening now in a legal determination. Same thing goes with marketing. Marketing is easy if you actually look at what's going on in the space. And when we look at our consumer behavior of our clients, you become a client whisperer, and it becomes a no-brainer what you need to do to make them happy. And ultimately, a happy client is going to make that intake much easier because they're gonna say things in public forums, or they're gonna refer you, and that is the money to the overall alert communications partnership. So follow the data. Continue to be focused on your client. Be client first. And come to our blog, check out what we're talking about out there on the thought leadership. Ultimately, we think it will make you more powerful in what you're doing. So with that, Quinn and Max, I'm looking in the chat to see what else we've got out there, see if we've got any questions. But feel free to chime in if y'all have seen anything pop in.
No questions just yet.
Perfect. Well, while we wait for a question or two to come in, I will throw up the QR code and the link in case you want to take this conversation to a more one-on-one nature outside of the web event. And again, this will work if you're listening to the replay. I know a lot of folks are joining live, but we're also going to have this available for replay. So if you like or had some follow-up questions and just want to engage with the subject matter experts, we can make sure that we get a solutions consultant to talk through how these things apply to your specific use case. See a couple thank yous and great information. Thank you for the feedback. We appreciate it. So I think we'll give it another minute, Quinn, just to see what pops in, and then we'll call it a day.
Okay, with that, I feel like if there's any additional questions, feel free to reach out to either utilize it and scan that QR code or reach out to your case status. Oh, there is a question.
Oh, we got one in.
So Paul, the question is, does it make sense to score the NPS at the end of the case rather than after each stage?
Yeah, so a great question. And again, I think that's the default when folks are using surveys and whatnot to check. I think it is very important to check at the end, but I equate it to, a dinner, going out to eat, right? So if you go out, they're late getting, you had the reservation, they're late getting the table, they're late getting the drink order, the food's cold, right? Like all the stuff happens, and then they come at the end when the check has been delivered, and they ask you, "How was your dinner?" At that point, I'm as a consumer very frustrated because I had a terrible experience, and you're asking me at the end when you can't do anything about it. Maybe you can offer a free dinner, another makeup, but I think the end is too late. So I think the idea of checking NPS throughout, keeping a pulse on it, and having that playbook, of being able to react appropriately, proactively, I guess is more appropriate. We see really high ratings there. So that's back to the insights. We measure that not only at the client case level, we measure it at the whoever owns the case level. So you can manage staff, and we manage it at the practice area or the firm level. So you can really dial into the progress, not only that your client is making throughout the case, but also to the overall firm and the overall staff. My last point will be, you can also make changes, right? A lot of times the feedback may be, hey, you just need to change the journey a little bit. Like, something about going from stage 4 to stage 5 just left me in the lurch. And that's my feedback, right? And so sometimes the feedback earlier on helps you operationally change a little bit of workflow in maybe not a very disruptive way. So we've got a lot of use cases there to the person asking, where we really see the advantages of having that data. And my final point would be, don't take my word for it. We've got some great testimonials and customer stories on our site, and folks that probably will be willing to talk to you, and they can tell you that they had that same perspective. They're not measuring or doing it at the end, and now that they have it as they go through, they love it, and it takes the fear out of it. Yeah, and last point, you also want to juxtapose it to best practices about how often you should ask, right? So we bring that to bear as well, to make sure that the asks are frequent enough, but not too frequent, and that's important as well. Great question.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Paul, and thank you to everyone who attended and watched. This is an Alert Communications. This is an Alert Communications and Case Status joint webinar, How Case Status Accelerates Growth and Improves Client Relationships. Thank you all so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.